Happy New Year again. This is your Committee on Education. Today is Friday the 13th. The time is about 3 o'clock p.m. and we are in conference room 325. This is our normal pre-session briefing to get a feel for the direction the departments want to go, to get an idea of their funding needs, and also just to get an overall overview of these crucially important agencies. We have a new agency I want to mention, that is the School Facilities Agency. It is established to help us complement our needs as it relates to our kids. And I also want to highlight the fact that over the past couple of years, all of our schools across the country and nation and country are the same thing, nation and the world is what I meant to say, have suffered learning loss, and that's due primarily to the COVID-19 pandemic. Even given that, it's important to make a notation that our state, Hawaii, did very well on our NAEP scores, and we actually made increases. So there's progress there. That is a testament to our teachers, our administrators, our other personnel on campus in our departments of education. So we are grateful for them. We are going to start today with our libraries, followed by EOEL, and then school facilities, and then DOE. We will take questions after each of those various agencies. Okay, so first up we have our state librarian. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Aloha and Happy New Year. It's so nice to see everybody in the flesh. I'm Stacey Aldridge. I'm the state librarian, and I have with me my wonderful colleagues, Mallory Fujitani, who is a special assistant to the state librarian, and she'll be driving today for the PowerPoint, the presentation that we've put together. So the first image I wanted to share with you is a picture of our very first library from 1913. It actually opened February 1st, 1913. And it's our Hawaii State Library. It was funded by, a large part, by Andrew Carnegie. So it's one of the Carnegie libraries from around the United States. He made a challenge to Hawaii to raise money, enough money to match his $100,000, which was a lot of money at the time. He normally only gave about $40,000 to $45,000 to a community, but he gave us $100,000. When I look at this picture of the library, which you'll see in moments, I think about what libraries were like in 1913 and what the role was of libraries. And in many ways, libraries are still like 1913, but they've also changed as well. I think we're almost there. Thank you. So this is the 1913. And then Andrew Carnegie believed in the power of public libraries, as we still do today. He was a poor young immigrant from Scotland who was allowed to use a neighbor's library, and he promised if he ever made money, he would help people be able to do the same across the nation and across the country, because he felt that libraries were a place that people could make themselves. And I think our libraries continue to be those places. When you look at just a snapshot of what we've been doing over the past year, so in FY22, our circulation of all of our items, including digital and physical, went up 30%. Physical items alone went up 28%. So people are still reading paper, and they're still also downloading a lot of ebooks. So over 1 million ebooks were downloaded, and we had over 50,000 movies watched using Canopy. So people are using both. They're using paper and they're using our digital resources. When we look at some of our, go ahead one more time, there we go. If you look at some of our resources, Mango Languages, it was used 18,000 times, and the top 4 languages were French, Spanish, Japanese, and Hawaiian. There's actually 72 languages that you can learn with this app, including Pirate, but these were the top 4. I'm not sure where Pirate ranks. We also now have an app that's our mobile app that is interactive, where you can monitor your account. You can check out materials. If you're a family, you can have multiple library cards on your same app, so you don't have to carry all of them with you. And it was launched more than 450,000 times, which is really pretty wonderful to see people are using our digital resources. And the fact that you can check things out without actually going to the desk is kind of nice. You can just scan them. In terms of Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi continues to be used. We know that was used more across the state, more than 122,000 times. And in terms of internet connectivity, we had 158,000 sessions of people using the internet. We recently did a study, a survey of our public to see what was important to them about public libraries. And all of the things that you see in the data actually hold up. People really like to be able to connect to collections and be able to check out materials. They like to be able to bring their children to early literacy programming. They like to have spaces where they can come and meet with other people and take classes. They want to be able to connect to Wi-Fi. We know that 18 to 29 likes to use Wi-Fi at the library and also have a quiet space to be. And so when we look at those statistics and we think about what's important to people, there's a little bit of wanting the old, the things that we traditionally think about as a library, but there's also people who want more classes to learn how to use computers. They want more access to technology that they can check out. So there are new things that people want as well. So we're constantly trying to change and grow with our communities. Next slide, please. So when we think about our libraries, we often talk about being physical and digital. So we have 51 branches on 6 islands. And in those branches, we're doing a lot of things. We're connecting people. We have collections, and not just collections of books, but collections of things. So we have ukuleles in all of our libraries now, thanks to the Music for Life Foundation. We have technology. So in some of our locations, and from the survey, we know that people who are from lower income brackets, they rely on our libraries to have access to technology and to the internet. And then we also offer classes and learning, so people can learn a new skill and just better their lives. And then gathering, a place to gather. When we have done our focus groups with communities where we're building new libraries or looking at redoing our libraries, one of the things they ask for are places to gather, because there are very few places in a lot of communities, especially rural areas, where people can gather. So our physical locations are still very important. And then we're also digital. And when I think about all the digital, we think about exploring, reading, learning, and watching. So exploring, we have tons of databases, which is probably overwhelming and a paradox of choice. People can't find anything because there's so much there. But if you need to know if there's a recall on your car or you want to change something, we have Chilton's online, so you can actually find that information. Just as one example, I think we have more than 100 databases available. We have ebooks through Libby, which is very popular. When I looked through the comments on our survey from the 18,000 people, there's 900 pages of comments. Some are very short, but most people love Libby, and they're using Libby to download ebooks and audiobooks and magazines, and also to take classes, because you can take an ukulele class through Libby as well. And then we also have our learning databases like Mango, which we just talked about, had 18,000 usages. But we also have a online learning called Gale. And last year, it was only used about 550 times. This year, or the year before, it was like 550 times. This past year, it was used over 2,700 times. So there's an increase. People are looking for ways to improve their skills. And then we also have streaming movies. So if you haven't used Canopy, I encourage you to try Canopy, which has not only educational movies, but also movies that are award winners, movies that address all kinds of issues. It's not just educational, boring stuff. And there's also a family component and for children. Children's Canopy has Sesame Street and all the kinds of learning things that parents might want to have for their children. So you can read, you can watch, and you can learn just using your computer or your phone. Just as a little, some statistics, I always like to throw this out here. For ebooks, the #1 ebook in 2022 was The Midnight Library, overall in adult fiction, and nonfiction was Crying in the H Mart, and I don't know if anybody has read that one. But there's a lot of books. We also put in young adult books because it's always interesting to see what young adults may be reading, but we know adults also read young adults. But the ones that were most popular this summer, I Turned Pretty is also a TV series, I believe, on Netflix. And then for nonfiction, the #1 book was All Boys Are Blue. And then for juveniles, Wander is still very popular, and The 5 Flying Penguins. And then for nonfiction, there's a lot of interest in if an animal would battle another animal, which one would win? So there's some jungle books in there, and also some other kinds of creatures. I think there's one about dinosaurs. And then my favorite one, which I'm really curious about, which I want to look at now, is The Donner Dinner Party, which was #5 with ebooks. Not to be biased just against ebooks, but the #1 book for paper was actually still Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. That one still is getting checked out a lot. So when we think about reading and we think about libraries, we support literacy a lot. We have hundreds of programs, we're doing more and more now, that are open to the public and to families to bring their kids in to get them excited about reading and to teach them new skills, to sing, to play, to talk, to hear the words. And so these are just some pictures from some of our libraries and the programs we've had. In the upper right-hand corner, one of our library staff members, he grows a very long beard throughout the whole year, and he plays Santa Claus. And he had over 100 people showing up for his programs. In Makawao, they had a Christmas program this past December, and over 600 people showed up in a short amount of time. So people really do value these opportunities, free opportunities to be with other people, to learn and encourage their kids to be connected. And we support digital literacy. Libraries have been supporting digital literacy since the internet came into libraries in the 90s. But with the pandemic, it became very clear that many people didn't have basic digital literacy skills, and Senate Bill 2214 put into libraries the role of making sure that we have resources for people. And when we think about digital literacy, there's 2 definitions I just wanted to share with you, because I've been working on digital literacy for a long time, and it's sometimes hard to, everybody has a different definition, but there's broad definitions and then there are narrow definitions. And the broad ones really are focused on how do we make sure people have the skills to live every day. When I think about all the sites now, we start moving more information for government and everything online. If people don't have the basic skills or the connectivity, they cannot participate. So it's important to not only have access in our libraries and hopefully eventually in their homes, but also to have the skill sets that they need to do that. And the narrow definition is more of people being able to find, use, and evaluate information. So we already have some products and services that are available. We have North Star, which allows you to take an assessment to see how much do you really know about using the internet, using computers, using Word, and then you can take small courses to improve your skills. If you sign up to take it, it creates a little dashboard and you can monitor what you're learning. And then for those folks who are beyond the basics, we now have Skill Finder, which is over 1,500 courses offered by the world's leading technology companies. And these are things, the types of courses somebody might want to take if they want to know more about artificial intelligence, they want to do web design, they want to do data analysis, they want to become a project manager for a digital company. We want to support people who want to build their skills so they can find jobs elsewhere, but they can still live in Hawaii. So Skill Finder is a great new tool that we've added. And then we're evolving with partners and innovating, and we just recently this year opened an esports tech lab at Waipahu. And so we worked with the True Initiative to have, we have 5 workstations. We bought more with our federal dollars to make it more, because 10 is actually the magic number for esports. But we've been working with True. They hired somebody to create a cohort of young students to learn not only how to game, but also how to do programming. So through this lab, you have access to a program to learn how to do coding. And so it's teaching kids how to be ready for next generation jobs that are going to be out there. And we hope to expand this program as we move into the future. So when we think about our libraries, we think about our libraries as being places for opportunities for everyone to read freely, to learn, connect, and to grow. So as we think about our challenges and we thought about our budget, we really looked at what is it that we need to continue to provide services and to keep growing. And our basic challenges really are the basics. We need the basic foundations to support our services. So since these are the requests that we'll be putting in this year. Since FY21, we've had 64 unfunded positions, which is about $3.2 million. Normally, we carry about a 10 to 12% vacancy rate. With this on top of what our normal vacancy rate is, we have a vacancy rate of about 24%, and it's been even higher during the past 2 years. And that's a challenge for us because we need bodies to actually keep the libraries open, and then we need bodies to help provide the services on the back end. So being able to fill these positions is crucial for us. We also are asking for 2 library and 6 positions. We have one person who's managing 49 libraries operationally on 6 islands. And we used to have what we called districts, where we had a body on each island to support that island. We reorganized, and we actually were able to find a few positions that we could reorg into these management positions. And we're asking for these 2 positions so we can put a manager on Maui and a manager on the Big Island. And these positions are crucial to providing the day-to-day support, for understanding what staffing is needed, for working on collections, and just building the services that are needed on each island. It's really hard for one person to do that across all the islands. We know that we're understaffed on our neighbor islands, and in particular, the Big Island. And one of the things we do a lot is we actually pilot test things to see if we can try something new. And we've piloted the idea of having a floating janitor. We often have times having a janitor available in one of our 12 locations. Either people leave, they don't show up, and having a clean library really matters, having a clean bathroom, and in some areas we have some real issues with bio-waste on the outside of our libraries and other kinds of cleanliness and health issues. So we've had a floating janitor who can float to whichever library needs to have a janitor or needs to work on any extra projects to keep our libraries healthy and safe. And so we would like to make that a permanent position. It's working very well. The other thing we need is another driver. We only have one driver on the Big Island, and it's a big island, and having one driver is very difficult in order to deliver all of our materials. And we want to make sure that not only do we have another driver to support the west side of the island, but we also are building a new library in Waikoloa, so we're going to be adding more movement of materials and of other kinds of items that people need in their libraries. So having an additional driver, they'll be able to back up the one. When the one is out, we have nobody else. We have hired temporary positions, but it's not sustainable. So those are the positions we're looking for. And then we have 3 additional things that we're looking for. To support the digital literacy program that we're putting together in the library, we're asking for $100,000 to help us hire someone who can help us manage a program across the state. It's not feasible for us to expect every library to figure out how to do digital literacy. And we also have a partnership with the Department of Labor with some federal funding coming that is going to require some organization of getting digital literacy trainers in all of our libraries. We're trying to create as much equity across all of our libraries, not just some. And we want to make sure that classes are available across all of the islands and in each of the libraries. So this funding would help to support a person to help us organize, and then some resources. Concerning security guards, we have security guards in about 41 of our 51 branches. And we have a challenge with the amount of money that we actually pay the security guards. We've been learning as we start to work on a new contract that our current contract is only $15 an hour, and the going rate right now is $25 to $30 an hour. So you don't get much when you pay $15 an hour, and we're already facing problems in some of our communities with the company that we're working with, finding people who will accept that pay to provide security. And then lastly is something that wasn't in the budget that we submitted, and it's only because this is something we've added to our recent submission to the Green Administration, is a public awareness program. through our survey, it's very clear most people do not know what the library has to offer. And we want to make sure all families and all of the people in the community really understand what tools are available at the library and how they can be helpful to them. So the public awareness program would help us identify and have the expertise and the resources to build that program. And then in terms of CIP projects, we're asking for a lump sum of $10 million for health and safety. What happens when we do projects is it becomes difficult. By the time we get through all the contracting for the planning, we never really know exactly how much a project's going to cost. And so when we have the lump sum, we are able to continue a project and complete a project versus having to wait for each legislative session to ask for money to fund a project. So the 10 million lump sum is very helpful to us. It also helps us deal with issues with AC that might go down unexpectedly. We have that money is there and available to deal with that problem. And then we've been working on a project to take 2 school libraries, school and public libraries, one in Mountain View and one in Ke'au, and make it a single library for the community. And it's a larger, more advanced library. Right now, the challenge with the current locations is that they're in the middle of the campus, and in particular, Mountain View, they have to go to the office and get permission, basically, to walk to get to the library. So it's a barrier for the community. So we're really looking forward to building that library. And we've been planning for many years, and when we have an allotment already of $10 million. When we first began the planning, that seemed like enough, but now when you look at the cost, the increase of costs for construction, we're gonna need another $10 million to complete that project. So those are our funding requests. Anna, do you want to add anything, Mallory? No? Okay. So when we think about our libraries, again, we always think we are all about opportunity and free opportunity for anybody who walks through our physical or our virtual doors to have access to the resources they need to be successful. And we thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions you might have. Mahalo.
Thank you so much for being here. Members, we're going to go ahead and ask questions of our state librarian. Members, any questions? No one ask questions?
I would just like to make a comment. I just want to thank you guys for what you do. I feel like our library system is so innovative, and you didn't even mention, like in my community, we use a library room for our community meeting space. It's really crucial. And you folks also store documents for us so that everybody will have access to it even if they don't use the internet. So I really appreciate the role that you folks play.
Thank you. That's why we're there.
Thank you. Vice Chair. Rep. Madioshi.
Please, Amy first if she has it.
Rep. Madioshi, yeah.
So you mentioned that there are 60 plus unfunded positions. Are those just vacant positions here? Or are those, can you expand on that a little more, please?
Sure. So in FY21, when there were a lot of budget cuts, we had, a lot of positions were taken, and thank you, Representative Woodson helped us keep the positions, but they were unfunded. So we have the position, we just don't have the money for those positions.
Are there vacant positions that are funded currently?
Yes, yes. So there's a total of 149 right now. It kind of moves and shifts. I think it's 149 right now. So less 64 is what we have right now. So that's.
And those are vacant positions.
Mm-hmm.
So you have about 70-ish funded vacant positions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the challenge for us in filling positions, well, we have 3.2 million just not available, period, for positions. But every year we also had restricted funding from the governor's office. And so that's usually 3 to 10%. And this past year, this year, it was 3.7 million. So at the beginning of the fiscal year, we started off more than 6 million for positions, and 80% of our budget is people. So we did ask the governor before he left if he would give us back our restricted funds, and he did. He gave us the 3.7. So we're trying to hire as fast as we can to try to fill positions that have been vacant.
So if I could ask a follow-up.
Go ahead.
I mean, we've got a problem throughout the state in hiring right now, and it's being made abundantly clear to me. what's the likelihood that you're going to be able to fill more positions than you already are, given that you do have 70 positions that are funded but are currently empty? I mean, it just seems a little odd to ask for 60 more funded positions when we have 70 vacant ones that are already funded, even though I know you're making a good effort to fill those. It seems like you're putting the cart before the horse a bit.
So, we need all the positions. I guess that's the challenge for us. So, yes, we have 70 positions that have been rotating because these are newer positions that people have either retired or have left, and we're filling those positions. But there's 69, or it was originally 69 positions, but 64. The 64 positions that are unfilled are positions we actually need. So, for example, one of the positions that was frozen and no funding was for a branch manager for our Kailua Kona branch. We need a manager for that. So what we had to do is freeze another position so we could fund that position. So there are positions in the 69 that we actually need. So we had those positions before, and they're just locked down, so we can't really fill them unless we give up another position.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rep. Paruso.
Just following up on that line of questioning, what is your turnaround time in terms of the time between a person submitting an application for the position and then being able to actually have that person fill the position?
It can take up to 6 months.
6 months.
And it depends on the position, but it takes a long time. And the challenge for us too is if we go through the whole process and we finally get a list and we are able to interview people, by the time we get to some of those people, they already have jobs or they decided to turn down the job. So then we have to start all over again. So it can take more than a year to hire.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up question, that's my last question. Are you having difficulty with respect to the position descriptions? Are you able to, if you need to, get those positions re-described if necessary?
We can have we can work on the position descriptions. The challenge are the classification. So the classifications are pretty rigid. So if we need a children's librarian, it's always advertised as, say it's a librarian 3. It has to follow that classification. So we will get everybody who can fit into that 3 unless we go through another process to try to only get the people who can do children. So it becomes...
So you can't advertise it. You have to advertise it as a librarian 3. You can't advertise it so that the person applying doesn't know if they're a good match.
Sometimes not. We can put in that we're looking for somebody who has these skill sets, but when it comes to the classification, it's a 3. So if somebody meets the basic classification, then they'll get into the list, and then we have to cull it even more based on other experience that we're looking for, which seems like extra work. If we can tell people up front
right.
that this is the job and this is what we need versus having to get a list for 3 and then go through the list and figure out who. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just continuing following up, and so is there any recommended processes that you folks can recommend to us to shorten that time period down from 1 year to 6 months to maybe 3 months or 1 month? What do you guys need from us, from the legislature, in order to do that?
If I could humbly share what happened in California when I was a state librarian in California, Department of Human Resources would give authority to a department to follow process, and they're the ones who would look at the applications and determine who they were going to interview and go through the whole process. And there was a very specific process we had to follow. If we didn't follow that process, we could have our authority revoked. So we followed process. It helps because we know who we're looking for, and it's difficult when you're having a person who's sitting in another department looking through a list of things and determining whether or not these are the right people to send to you and whether or not they're qualified. It takes out that whole weight for somebody to get to your positions because we can focus on our positions. So if we could find a way to delegate authority and to make sure people are following appropriate protocols within the state of Hawaii, I think that could really lessen the amount of time, because oftentimes we're waiting for deterred because they don't have as many people to go through and put the list together for us. That would be my one
So
suggestion.
it's just for the edification of the public, you're saying that actually another department handles the hiring for your library system?
They handle putting it's like everything except for us interviewing and then identifying people, but they do all the other processes, yes. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you for that. We spoke about in the past that you've had challenges with regards to houseless individuals congregating on library grounds. Have you had any success of addressing that issue? You also referenced the fact that your price point that you're paying your security guards
Mhm.
is about $10 lower per hour than that of the market average.
Mhm.
And so if you can kind of speak to some of your success or failure regarding those efforts.
When we've had success, it's been interrupting patterns of people being somewhere. So we've had cases where we have we've had guards coming throughout the night or at different times and then having people leave, but it's expensive for us to do that. I think the one challenge we face is clarity on who is responsible to help us move people off of state property. Here in Honolulu, we face oftentimes a challenge between HPD and the sheriffs and who's responsible for moving people and whether or not it's appropriate. I would say right now I'm very concerned about what's happening on Like Mall. I don't know if you've seen, there's a huge encampment. It's right at the end, and it's now all the way up to almost the library, and it's not safe to have people there. And our staff are now dealing with all cleaning up, but there's no clear process to ask them to move somewhere else. And we have people who will not come into the library because they see those encampments and then they're afraid to come to the library.
What do you mean by that? So you call HPD and then they say call sheriffs, and then
Call
you
the
call
sheriffs, and
they
the
say
sheriffs
HPD.
are like, yeah, we don't know who's in charge sometimes, or they'll say, well, we were told not to. So we're never sure what the policy is. And our manager over at HSL this morning, when I turned in to come to hearings, he was out talking with the folks, trying to get them to clean up their areas. We try to be compassionate, but at a certain point, we have concerns because there are people who have mental health issues and who are doing drugs. Our staff have actually taken pictures of people doing drugs and shared them, and people are like, we can't do anything about it. So where's the responsibility? I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure that out. Like, who do I need to talk with now to create a safe space for people to come down the Like so that they can put their books in the book drop, or they can drop their family off to go into the library? People are not going to want to do that. It doesn't feel safe. And so I'm at a loss because I'm trying to figure out, and then we're in a new administration too. We used to work with the Office of Homeless, and we hope to continue to do that, and we were very successful in working with them. They would send over people who would talk to the people who were on our lanai. But for the most part, it's still a challenge for us. And I've heard too, on Maui, it's a challenge. At Kahului, actually, we've contacted the Maui police, and they haven't always responded to issues that we have about people gathering or living or destroying our property. So Kahului, we actually had a guy with a machete while they were doing some of the work, and he took down all of our trees. So we're trying to figure out, like, who do we contact and who's taking responsibility? How do we work together to help people find resources, but to also create safe spaces?
And in that specific incident, you called MPD. You said that there's a guy with a machete running around, and they didn't respond?
I don't know if we called about the machete. I think we did call about issues, I think, with the person. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully if you call the police and they say there's a guy with a machete, they're going to respond. Okay.
But it is a challenge, and I think there's a lot of compassion fatigue, and I think there's a lot of confusion. And it would be lovely to figure out a way to determine, like, on we're state property, so HPD will say, nope, sheriffs have to deal with that. And we talk to the sheriffs, they're like, nope, we don't have the resources. So we would love to have more conversations to find a better way.
Yes, let's talk offline to try to get some clarification as to whose authority is what. In closing, you are requesting $550,000 for security guard services. You also mentioned, as I indicated earlier, there's a $10 difference between what you're offering or what you can offer. Is it what you are offering or what you can offer?
It's for what we could offer. So right now we're at $15.
And that's because of the limited resources, or is it because you're...
Part of it is our contract with the current company, which is coming up, and we have to put out a new contract. So we were previously speaking with the folks at DAGS, and they've been working on statewide contracts to figure out, to help make it easier for us to identify companies to work with. And they were telling us the rate. So they said, get prepared when you put that contract out to know that it's going to be more. So the $550,000 will supplement our current budget so that we can pay the higher amount.
Okay. It's getting late and we have to move on, but let me just quickly ask, if I may, how many families use the library campuses for internet service? Do you have a data point on that?
I would have to, I don't think we have a data point on exactly how many families. We can only tell you how many usages we have of like internet workstations or Wi-Fi. I think it would be harder for us to pin down like the type of people who are using each service.
Are those workstations overutilized, or?
It depends on the branch. In some of the branches, they're heavily used. I would say places like Waianae, they're always used. And last time I was at Nanakuli, there were a lot of people using the computers in Nanakuli. A lot of people do have their own devices, so they're coming in and using Wi-Fi.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Members,
Appreciate
any
it.
other questions? Moving on, next we have, who do we have? We have OEL.
Thank you.
Quick recess. Go ahead, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Aloha. Good afternoon, Chair Woodson and Vice Chair Martin and committee members. I'm Yuko Arikawa Cross. I'm the Director of the Executive Office on Early Learning. I'm here today with my Government Affairs Specialist, Jordana Ferreira, and my Educational Specialist for our Public Pre-K program, Colleen Momohara. So I'm here. Thank you so much for allowing me time to share about our Executive Office on Early Learning and how we're looking forward to this legislative session. Today I'll provide a quick introduction to our agency and our budget priorities for the upcoming biennium. Next slide. EOEL is statutorily charged to ensure a spectrum of high-quality early learning opportunities for children throughout the state, from prenatal care until the time they enter kindergarten, with priority given to underserved or at-risk children. Next slide. Our vision speaks to the importance of high-quality early learning experiences during the early years for lifelong well-being. Next slide. We work through collaboration and partnerships with public, private, and nonprofit to ensure children, families, and our workforce are supported. Next slide. We were asked to speak to NAEP, and so we know that the quality of learning experiences promote the development of higher level thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning, curiosity, social identity that help to ensure academic success. Next slide. The NAEP is a random sampling of students and results are never reported for individual students, so there would be no way to identify who scored what relative to the EOEL population versus the non-EOEL population. However, What we do have is feedback from administrators such as this that shines a bright light on our program and the benefit it brings to our students and schools. And this administrator said, when reviewing data, my current 20 fourth graders who had EOEL experience are leading the grade level in our DIBELS and iReady scores. But all three are on or above grade level. Oh, all but three are on or above grade level, and we know EOEL works. Next slide. This other data point is relative to Hawaii State Assessment. So in 2020, Hawaii P20 and EOEL collaborated on a report on the first cohort of EOEL pre-K students, and we are actually going to be working to update to see how the more recent cohorts are doing. But EOEL's pre-K first classrooms are on DOE campuses with the highest rates of economically disadvantaged students or schools and communities with limited early learning opportunities. EOEL pre-K students had similar characteristics as their peers who entered kindergarten with them at their same school, so economically disadvantaged, typically Native Hawaiian, and chronically absent in any school year between kindergarten in 15-16 and third grade in 18-19, compared to other students who entered kindergarten at a school that did not offer EOEL pre-K. EOEL pre-K students were more likely to meet or exceed standards on third grade standards-based assessments compared to students who attended an EOEL school but did not participate in EOEL pre-K. And students who remained continuously enrolled at the same school between kindergarten and third grade had higher rates of meeting or exceeding third grade standards-based assessments than students who changed schools. Next slide. Our office has two main functions. The first is to coordinate and support investments, policies, and programs that strengthen the entire early childhood care and education sector. And the second is to administer the EOEL public pre-kindergarten program. We are in support of enhancing a diverse population of providers to include licensed providers, early Head Start, charter schools, and pre-plus contracts in addition to EOEL public pre-K. We work closely with other departments such as the Department of Education, Hawaii Public Charter School Commission, Department of Health, Department of Human Services, university systems, and others to enhance the system of early learning for our youngest keiki and their families. While we continue to work towards stabilizing the field, we are also focusing on expanding access to early learning opportunities. Next slide. The EOEL public pre-K program returned to in-person learning in 2021 and continues to operate 37 classrooms across 34 DOE campuses statewide. We are proud to continue focusing efforts to support the hallmarks of our program by supporting well-trained and well-supported educators through ongoing professional learning support and through the establishment of the Early Childhood Educator Stipend Program, and prioritizing at-risk and underserved children and families who deserve quality opportunities. Next slide. EOEL receives federal funding for Hawaii's Head Start Collaboration Office, which includes one FTE position that supports this office. The Head Start Collaboration Office helps to coordinate and facilitate partnerships among local Head Start grant recipients who receive funded enrollment dollars or numbers of Head Start slots that are federally funded in the state, as well as ensuring the Head Start voice is included in state-level planning. Next slide. The annual EOEL budget for current biennium totals just under $7.2 million, of which just over $7 million is through general funds. And these funds are currently supporting 37 public pre-K classrooms across the state on DOE campuses, including teacher and educational assistant positions, 2 multi-generational family-child interactive learning programs on 2 DOE campuses, and also funds positions and activities that support EOEL's other statutory responsibilities, including coordinating the early learning system. Next slide. In this upcoming legislative session, our board approved requests focus on the expansion of programs and services directly to children and families, workforce initiatives to help bolster the early learning workforce, EOEL's internal capacity and support for our early learning board. If approved, the base budget general funds would increase to just over $10 million in fiscal year 24 and just over $12 million in fiscal year 25. It's important to note that we anticipate having additional funding requests related to new requests for public pre-K classrooms and we are going to be working with the new administration's budget review process. Next slide. Our priority request is to expand EOEL public pre-K programs. Through our host application process conducted in spring of 2022, we identified 23 classrooms that, if fully funded, will be set to welcome students in school year 24-25. Part of the requirement is to provide support to incorporate high-quality standards, and principals and other school personnel are going to be participating in the induction program in the first year. Induction also addresses infrastructure needs to open the rooms the following year. The state office teachers are integral to the EOEL public pre-K program and providing ongoing professional learning support to classroom staff, including coaching, mentoring, and consultation. Our fiscal year 25 requests include the operational and personnel costs needed to open these 23 classrooms, and they include 1 teacher and 1 educational assistant in each classroom, and administrative costs, including personnel to support the classrooms, materials, and supplies for each year of implementation. Next slide. We are also requesting funds to expand family-child interactive learning programs, which are multi-generational, culture-based programs that support families to take an active role in the social, emotional, and cognitive development of their children. This is important because these programs set the foundations for families to build nurturing, responsive relationships with their children, which is key to lifelong success. EOEL currently contracts 2 FCIL programs that operate on DOE campuses. These are Nanakuli and Kailua Elementary right now. With an additional $600,000, the state would be able to open up to 9 FCIL programs. We are also requesting $660,000 for the Early Childhood Educator Stipend Program. We know that the demand for quality early care and education continues to exceed the amount of available and qualified educators, and if expansion plans will be successful, we need to continue our focus on bolstering the early learning workforce. Act 210 established the Early Childhood Educator Stipend Program, and EOEL is currently working to finalize this application and hoping to administer it the summer of this year. With $660,000, we're able to support educators who are pursuing a Child Development Associate Certificate or an Associate's Bachelor's or Master's degree. These funds alleviate the financial burden many individuals face when entering the field or attempting to gain higher education qualifications by providing financial assistance up front. Next slide. We are requesting an appropriation ceiling of $3 million for the Early Learning Special Fund. Pursuant to Chapter 302L5, the Early Learning Special Fund can be used to support the early learning system, and currently, this special fund has no appropriation ceiling. Hawaii just received notice that we were awarded a federal grant, which may provide opportunities for other funds, such as donations, to be funneled into the special fund to leverage initiatives related to supporting the entire early learning system. Next slide. We are also requesting funds to enhance EOEL's internal capacity. We are requesting 3 FTE positions, of which only 1 requires funding. The 2 FTE positions are position counts only. One is a currently filled contract specialist position who's responsible for the procurement and contracts and tracking MOUs and MOAs that are made with our office. And the other one is a business manager. The third position, which we'd like funded, is a program specialist, 5, who will help with the renewal of the Early Childhood State Plan. Associated with that third position, we'll be working to renew the plan, and that's where the $480,000 comes for, to commission a study to update the Comprehensive Early Learning Needs Assessment that reflects the landscape more recently to inform strategies and initiatives to move forward. Next slide. The final request is of our Early Learning Board. Our board is requesting $122,800 to fund 1 permanent FTE position and to support the board's capacity to achieve its statutory obligations. The 1 FTE position was appropriated in Act 210 to facilitate the implementation of Act 46, and this position is currently filled. The additional funding request would be used for the Early Learning Board to contract services, purchase supplies and materials, and assist with transportation to help the board effectuate its statutory obligation. Next slide. So as I come to the end of my formal presentation, I want to thank the state legislature for your sustained commitment, not just to the Executive Office on Early Learning, but to early childhood care and education more broadly. Your commitments support employers, children, families, and communities in Hawaii as a whole, and we look forward to our continued work together. Thank you for your time, and we are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director. Members, any questions? Okay, Vice Chair, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering, do you folks also oversee, or how do you interact with the Kaiapuni preschools?
Okay, Kaiapuni preschools. So Kaiapuni, so there's Hawaiian medium preschools, and then there's Kaiapuni preschools. So some Kaiapuni preschools fall under the Department of Education, and some of the Hawaiian medium are either under a charter or there could be like a licensed provider. So
in the case of Blanche Pope Elementary.
Okay, so Blanche Pope Elementary, so what we understand right now is that they want to, I think they're trying to open a Kaiapuni, and at the time there was, I think a Head Start had moved into, so this is a little bit before I had come, so there was a little bit of miscommunication between who would be going onto Blanche Pope's campus. And so I think that was some kind of a connection between Head Start and the Kaiapuni startup, but we've been working with, we have a representative from Ahapunanaleo on our board, and we also are in partnership with Kamehameha Schools and the Head Start collaboration in our office, and of course EOEL, so we are actually working to address that so that we can make sure that those kinds of missteps don't happen.
Thank you.
So you discontinued that Head Start program at that campus?
No.
Okay.
No. Head Start, I think Head Start is still,
It's still there.
There's a Head Start at Waimanalo Elementary. We've never had actually one at Blanche Pope yet, which is a DHHL lot area. But I thought that Kamehameha Schools was funding a preschool there.
Yes, so Kamehameha, when Kamehameha funds a preschool, usually it's seed funding. So it's usually supposed to only be for maybe 2 years, maybe 3 at the most, in hopes that it can get turned over or perhaps taken into, let's say, EOEL inventory. But it doesn't quite always work like that. For example, if we are not funded our preschools, then certain things can happen and we can have a gap. So in another instance, we do know of a school that has expressed to us that their seed funding is supposed to end this year. But even if funded, we are not welcoming children into that space until next year because the first year is the onboarding. So we're actually working with Kamehameha to address that, because even if they are funded, the first year is for induction, year 2 is to bring children in. So there would be a gap regardless, but we are working to address that right now.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
I wanted to ask about the assessment tool that you folks use to screen kids coming into the program. My understanding is there's meant to be a different one created by OHE to do in Hawaiian language, and that you folks used a ready-made one, maybe from John Hopkins or something, and they are having to make their own, and they're needing more time. I wonder if you have any insight or any opinion about that process and that request for more time. What do you think?
So that's a really good question. So actually, I believe what you're speaking about is the kindergarten entry assessment. So that is that in terms of Act 46, that falls under the Department of Education's responsibility. So the Department of Education went through some sort of vetting process, and that is the tool that they did use. We do know that the Kula Kaiapuni are trying to ask for, I guess, a hold off on having their students take it. I'm not aware of OHE creating an assessment at this time, so that's a little bit new to me, but I can ask the representatives at the Department of Education to see where they are on that assessment.
No, that's my bad. I got confused about jurisdiction.
Okay.
It's fine, thank you.
We actually do have a bill to recalibrate that time frame, so to give them more time to provide some more compatibility with that particular assessment tool. Members, any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm glad to see that you folks have found 24 new classrooms. I SSIR data and reports have shown that there are over 1,000 classrooms in public schools that are currently not being used for classroom instruction. Has EOEL done any more investigation into the possibility to use those classrooms as well?
Yes, so thank you for asking that. So through our spring 2022 survey, we have identified the 23 classrooms. It has been made known to us, and that's where we say we're going to go through the new governor's budget process, that there could be potentially up to maybe 37 or around there, new rooms that are also interested. But also considering the DOE campuses, EOEL does administer pre-plus contracts where private providers can use vacant spaces on DOE property, and that has always been available. So what usually happens is that we have to have some sort of exchange with the Department of Education to see what rooms are available on which campuses. The challenge, though, is that DOE enrollment fluctuates at schools. And so what has happened also in the past with other pre-K spaces is that they could have it now, but if the enrollment grows, then the school has to accommodate their enrollment. And then, so that's why it's very important for us is that we have and begin to create dedicated spaces for preschool so that they don't open and then close because of enrollment on the school's campus.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, members. Any other questions? If not, I have a couple of questions. And so one of your slides alluded to assessment standards as it relates to the third grade. I'm wondering if you have any fresh data points as it relates to entering into kindergarten, because before the public pre-K program, 9 out of 10 students that participated in a public pre-K program met or exceeded social, emotional, and cognitive expectations going into kindergarten. Is that figure the same, or is it slipping, or is it increasing, if you can speak to that?
So I do not have the data on me right now that talks about EOEL pre-K students and I would consider that this is like universal screener data in kindergarten. I don't have that right now. But I do know that we will get data from this with the kindergarten entry assessment.
Okay, I think you're getting an assist.
Oh, you have it?
Phone a friend.
Okay. Sure.
You can please come up.
Yeah.
You can just identify yourself. She does
Sure,
great work with the
sorry, yes.
department, so
I'm
thank you for
Colleen
being here.
Momohara. I'm the educational specialist for the public pre-K program. After upon exiting the program, the children they are assessed, and that's what I think Chair Woodson is referring to. It's been pretty much, as far as the scores go, it's been pretty much 9 out of 10, and it still remains that way. It's been kind of like 90. Mid-90s, and this past year it was like 91%. We're meeting or exceeding the expectations.
That's excellent. So as you continue with expansion, how are you able to maintain that high figure? Because again, we're working with a population that socioeconomically is potentially has more challenges, and so that's a pretty high figure when you look at data. So we'd appreciate if you can explain a little bit more as to how you're able to maintain that number.
So I think all educators know that the most important person in the room is the teacher or the people who are right in front of the face of the students. So one of the things that we will continue to that we continue to mandate is the credentialing of the teachers and the qualifications of the teachers who are in front of the children. That's most important. Additionally, part of this funding request, and as we start to open up more rooms, we will continue to offer the support to the teachers who are in the classroom through our coaching and our mentoring.
All right, thank you for that. And just to piggyback off of a question that Rep. Capella had, we all know that there's additional conversations happening with regards to the quicker expansion of high-quality early learning opportunities for all 3 and 4-year-olds. I know that there's a lot of fluidity in the discussion, but there seems to be at least that your department is moving in the direction of offering more seats with regards to pre-K programs and others. I'm wondering if you can speak to the possibility of a much quicker expansion. so that we can meet the goal of providing these quality early learning opportunities within the constructs of the time period that we set forth in the 2 proposals that we passed and the governor signed into law.
Mhm. So thank you for that question. So when we look at the entire early childhood landscape, there are a lot of people who will funnel into this, into the effort to lift more seats for children. So currently we have licensed providers at centers, we've got in-home providers, we've got charter schools, we've got EOEL public pre-K, we've got Head Start. We could ask for a higher funded, federally funded enrollment. We've got other private providers who operate on DOE campuses, and also the DOE has in their inventory, which we're not necessarily trying to grow, but early childhood special education services, and also their capacity to open Title I pre-K. So there are many different people who we network with and are still working with to try to see how can we reach the goal together. But for EOEL side, we typically ask at the biennium because we want the positions to be FTE positions. If we do not have FTE positions, the likelihood that they can come and go is a little bit greater. And when we open up classrooms, we don't want to turn around and close them to impact the kids in their communities. So we will typically ask on the biennium so that year 1 is for induction, year 2 is for bringing on children, and that has been the pace at which EOEL has been operating. When we look over the history of EOEL since its inception, we've opened about 8 to 10 classrooms at every time that we've opened, it's increased by about 8 to 10. And so this year, when we're asking for 23, and then now the potential additional 30 something, we're working through those rooms. It will be the biggest growth since the inception of EOEL.
And that will, and if you do finalize, if your board finalizes or approves those additional seats, that request is going to be requested in the second fiscal year. Is that correct?
No, that's going to be put in to be on track with the same cohort, so long as the schools. So these schools, we were made aware of the schools. However, there's a little bit of fleshing out that we had to do because some of them had already been identified EOEL pre-K schools, and we're trying to figure out where are they going to fit, because EOEL administers facilitates many things through our office. So we weren't quite sure where these schools are going to fit. Are they going to be Head Start? Are they going to be pre-plus contracts, EOEL? Are they going to charter? Are we going to, what were they going to do? So EOEL welcomed and folded them into our inventory. We did ask our board to fund up to 37 requests because we need to really solidify the quantity that are interested and are ready to go to open next school year and welcome children next school year.
So just to oversimplify, is that going to be in this budget request this year or next year?
This year.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you so much again for being here and all your efforts. We will move on to the next agency, SFA, which is a fresh agency just established, and hear what they are up to.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Martin, excuse me, representatives. My name is Chad Keone Farias, and I'm the Executive Director of the School Facilities Authority. Before I begin our slides, I'd like to introduce Scott Fuji, our Administrative Services Officer.
He looks familiar.
There's so much in the title, but he does so much more than that, excuse me. who we are. I'm sorry, got my slides here. School Facilities Authority was established in 2020 by Act 72 and further defined by Act 217 in 2021. The SFA statutory responsibilities are for public school development, planning, and construction related to capital improvement projects assigned by the legislature, the governor, or the Board of Education. Projects include major renovations, new school facilities, and public-private partnerships. The SFA has its own independent board of directors made up of 5 voting members. Alan Oshima is the board chair. Other members are Candy Suiso, Lindsay Ball, Bettina Maynard, and Harold Edwards. SFA currently has 4 appropriated FTE positions in fiscal year 23. Myself, the executive director, Scott Fuji, a business manager, Cindy Watarita, and a 4th position that we'll be actively seeking to post, and that'll be a project manager. SFA executive budget request. The authority capacity building, 3 permanent. We are requesting 3 permanent full-time FTEs to perform our statutorily directed work. These positions will include a project manager, a planner, and a management analyst. No additional funding will be requested for these positions. In the executive budget, there's also requests for $750,000 for fiscal year 24 for statewide capacity projects, and $5.25 million for statewide capacity projects in fiscal year 25. That is the extent of our slides today,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you so much for being here. Members, any questions for SFA? Okay. Vice Chair Martin, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm wondering, what is the relationship between you folks and like AS Tanaka at the DOE? Like in terms of, you know, whether a CIP, who do we bother for this stuff? Like, how do we know?
Him. No. So the relationship is a good relationship. Obviously, I took this position coming from the DOE to see that we could continue progress for our KK. Current projects for CIP assigned to the DOE remains with the DOE. Future projects, well, not just future projects, projects including those assigned by Act 257 will remain with SFA, and future projects on CIP assigned to SFA will remain with SFA.
So that will be specifically assigned to you folks? Or
Those that were
otherwise it
assigned to us will
devolves
stay
to
with
the
us.
DOE? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Mhm.
Let me just follow. So let me just nail down on that. If you can just further articulate the delineation between DOE, school facilities, and what you folks do. I agree it's an important complement, but there is still some ambiguity or perceived ambiguity between the 2 roles of the 2 both important agencies.
Right. So you're right. Not just perceived. There still is some ambiguity. Those projects that are assigned to us, the specific Act 257 projects, are solely with SFA. We continue with our program partners and our agency partners to find out where those spaces are and how we can grow those classrooms. You heard from EOEL that even before Act 257, they identified 23 classrooms. Through the work with our agency partners, we've identified more classrooms. Those classrooms are on the DOE campuses, and so that partnership will be very, very clearly outlined in an MOA between 4 agencies. SFA, Hawaii State Public Charter Commissions, EOEL, and the DOE. So that will be defined in an MOA, making it a lot clearer for Act 257. Going forward, we will gradually work with the DOE to take over function or to assume function and responsibility should we get the positions to do so. So
is it safe to then assume that if there is a directive from either the Board of Education or SFA or the legislature as to who is taking on a specific project, then that's what's going to guide you, or are you still going to work out language to figure out who's has what responsibility?
Yeah, good question. Let me break that up. Whatever is assigned to the SFA from the governor, the legislature, or the Board of Education, the SFA will be responsible for it. And we'll continue to work with the Department of Education, especially if it's on DOE land, for things like right of access and safety, et cetera.
Okay. Rep. Pruso.
I have a quick question. So it's that clarification piece, and I am particularly obsessed with cafeterias. So if we think about the new approach to school food production with the centralized food kitchens, and because it's new construction, does that fall under you? And then renovation and rehabilitation of the old cafeterias, if we're going to have some kind of hybrid system, will fall under A.S. Tanaka's shop, or how will that relationship work?
Another really good question. A.S. Tanaka and I would have to work that out. Obviously, whatever is assigned to the SFA will engage in.
But I guess, I feel like that question should already be answered, because we allocated $35 million, and it's sitting on the governor's desk waiting to be signed. So we don't know where that's going. Will it go to you, or will it go to school food services or facilities?
You want Scott? Yes. So those, whatever monies are assigned to us, will stay with us, and we'll work out with the DOE. But Scott can confirm that money's. Sorry.
Hello, Representatives. Scott Fuji with the School Facilities Authority. Yes, so as outlined in the budget, the monies were allocated to the Department of Education, so we defer to them on projects, as Executive Director was just describing, that they are assigned to by the legislature. So those projects are going to remain within their purview.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. SFA is also doing rehabilitation and repair and maintenance, because you are working on preschool classrooms, public preschool. And DOE is also still doing new school building. So now we have two different agencies both doing both things.
If I can clarify, with the relationship for pre-kindergarten, that's a specific statutory work for renovation and rehabilitation for pre-kindergarten, but it's not within SFA's purview under SFA statute and 302A-1700 to do renovation and rehabilitation
so
work.
It's just the exception?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
and then is the new centralized kitchen work just the exception for the DOE's new facility building? Is that the only thing that the DOE will be building? Or are they also still building new classrooms and facilities? And I'm so confused as to why we have two agencies doing the same thing.
So I think the best way to answer that, Representative, is that there will be a period of transition and that the appropriations as currently made have to be respected from this body as to who that work was delineated to. But we are working closely with the Department of Education to work on how those functions transfer moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Is it safe to say that you folks have additional tools or flexibility that allows you to expedite processes to potentially move faster as it relates to R&M or CIP projects, or is that not safe to assume?
So this Act 72 didn't establish SFA in the realm of R&M, but for CIP, it has been given special powers, if you will, to do some work. I wouldn't say it's safe to say that we do it any faster than the DOE, or the term being used better. We were statutorily stood up. We were created to do things a little different in terms of thinking about how we create facilities that meet both the educational need of our keiki, but to also look at joint different partnerships to meet the needs of our community as well.
Okay, thank you, Director. Members, any other questions for SFA? Okay, we're going to take a quick recess. Good afternoon. We are reconvening our informational briefing this afternoon. The hour is late, but we have one more department, the Department of Education. Thank you for being here. We know that you've also had a long day. I also want to acknowledge Board Member Voss, who has joined us and is in the audience today. Thank you, sir, for being here. We greatly appreciate it. Others. Okay, so without further ado, we have Department of Education Superintendent.
Good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Martin, and representatives. Keith Hayashi, Superintendent. Thank you for the opportunity to share an overview of the Department of Education's biennial budget request. With me today are Board Chair Bruce Voss, Board of Education Member Bill Arakaki, Deputy Superintendents Heidi Armstrong, Tammy Oyadomari-Chan, Kurt Otoguro, and Chief Financial Officer Brian Hallett, along with our team of Assistant Superintendents who are available to answer any specific questions committee members may have. Next slide, please. Thank you. At our core, we support students and learning. The Department of Education is charged with ensuring that every student, regardless of their abilities or socioeconomic status, is prepared to be successful for life after high school, on whatever path they choose, whether it's college or post-secondary training, directly into the workforce, or military service. Our budget request aligns with and supports our ability to carry out this important mission by seeking predictable and reliable funding for our schools and system. Stabilizing the base budget for public education will support our strategic efforts to meet student needs throughout their pre-K through 12 journey. This data is what you're all familiar with. It speaks to the enormity of the responsibility we have to educate all students and the human resources needed to accomplish this well. We know that COVID disrupted student learning and impacted the social and emotional well-being of many of our students. Thanks to our dedicated employees, along with the continued support of the legislature and federal pandemic funding, the department was able to successfully reopen all of our schools for in-person learning for the 2021-22 school year and again this year. The priorities highlighted on this slide helped us transition during the pandemic and allowed us to stay focused on supporting our students. In recognition of that disruption, the federal government made huge investments in public education nationwide during the pandemic by providing emergency relief funding, which we are all very appreciative for. The largest pot, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER, was intended to stabilize our organization to the benefit of students, staff, and the state, and to respond to the detrimental effects on student learning. Outlined on this slide are four strategies the department identified for this recovery effort: healthy habits, healthy schools, action-oriented data decision-making, responsive capacity building, and effective academic practices. Aligned to these strategies, some of our targeted supports under ESSER include, number one, summer school. We expanded and provided free summer school for all students. Number two, after-school programs. We expanded access to after-school programs and provided subsidies to offset the cost of A+ for families. And number three, school-based health services. We expanded the Hawaii Keiki program that provides school-based health services. Each of our 15 complex areas now has an advanced practice registered nurse, or APRN. Each of our 41 complexes has a registered nurse. And there is a school health aide at every school. By leveraging ESSER funds to counter the effects of the pandemic, along with the hard work of our teachers and staff, I'm happy to share that our strategies are producing results for students. One example is our academic performance for the 2021-22 school year, which was our first full school year of in-person learning during COVID. As you can see on this slide, our overall proficiency level for English language arts was the highest among 11 states reporting scores on our statewide assessment. We used the Smarter Balance assessment, which is used by 14 states and territories, to assess academic proficiency and is an indicator of college and career readiness. Our overall proficiency level for mathematics, meanwhile, was near the highest performing states on this test. While we still have more to do to return to pre-pandemic achievement levels in Hawaii, and for every student to achieve proficiency, these results show that Hawaii fared well compared to many other states last year. While last year's student attendance was challenged by COVID-driven absences, the state assessment results reflect student performance broadly in the tested grades, grade 3 through 8 and 11. Student participation rates in the state assessment were 95% for English language arts, 96% for mathematics, and 94% for science. Hawaii's student performance on the National Assessment of Educational Progress, represented here by grade 4 reading results, confirmed our own assessment using the Smarter Balance assessment that was just shared on the prior slide. The NAEP shows how Hawaii performs in comparison to all other states in math and reading. The results show that our students fared far better than most states in last year's return to in-person learning. While the nation and most states show drops across the board, Hawaii's fourth and eighth graders held steady on 3 of 4 NAEP assessments. This slide shows a long, steady trend of improvement for Hawaii's fourth grade graders compared with the national average. So while we are not where we want our students to be, we are making progress. And last year's return to in-person learning yielded measurable results.
If you could pause, Superintendent, and go back
Yes.
to that slide.
Yes.
Remember, this is important because across the nation, virtually every single state had a drop in their NAEP assessments. Hawaii actually made an increase. That is, again, due to the hard work of the department, our teachers and our principals. And so thank you for that. And so I just wanted to highlight, again, that that's an important data point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. The NAEP test is typically administered every 2 years to a representative sample of 4th and 8th graders nationwide. Approximately 8,000 Hawaii students enrolled at 140 of our schools took the test in the spring of 2022. The first time the assessments were administered since 2019, prior to the pandemic. Overall, our 8th graders' reading remained steady compared with 2019, while the national average dropped during the same period. The result is that our 8th graders performed at the national level for the first time in reading, as shown on this slide. 4th and 8th grade math results are not shown, but Hawaii's 4th grade math score remained steady while the nation declined. Hawaii's 8th grade math continues to be challenged with a 10-year decline in performance. However, national declines were greater. Again, we are not where we want to be, but we are faring better than our mainland counterparts. I applaud the legislature for its continued funding for public education. And you can see that our per pupil funding exceeds the US average. However, when comparing our expenditures with states that performed higher than us on the recent 4th grade NAEP, we find that 5 of 7 higher performing states spent more per pupil than Hawaii in 2018 to 2019. Although we are very encouraged by the progress being made, and we are working diligently to sustain and accelerate this momentum, we know that a full recovery and achievement above pre-pandemic levels will take time and investment. Experts are predicting that students' academic recovery will take at least 3 years for elementary students and longer for secondary students. But we are all trying our best to accelerate this recovery. To help accelerate our efforts and move our entire system forward, we are focusing our attention on what we are calling high leverage initiatives. These are targeted areas that we know we need to dedicate resources to in order to best support our students. Areas like vulnerable populations. The pandemic exacerbated achievement gaps for our most vulnerable learners. We need to provide differentiated and targeted support in the classroom, school, and community to improve educational outcomes for student groups, including our Pacific Islanders and Native Hawaiian students, English learners, and students with disabilities. Another area, workforce. We need to ensure that we are graduating students who are workforce ready and can earn a living wage and thrive here in Hawaii. Our students deserve opportunities to explore viable career pathways and obtain the skills and experiences necessary to better position themselves as top candidates for jobs of current and emerging industries in Hawaii. Another focus area, secondary mathematics. We need to strengthen our math concepts that our students need to be successful in middle and high school, as well as in their post-secondary endeavors. The associated budget requests for these initiatives are presented in a later slide. All this work is grounded in our 4 statewide strategies referenced earlier, which all of our schools are already implementing. This chart helps provide context for the magnitude of the board-approved general fund biennial budget request in relation to the current fiscal year appropriation. The first bar on the left represents the current year general fund appropriation, and the second and third bars represent the department's base budget in blue and the department's budget request in orange for the first and second year of the biennium. The governor's budget request, $55.8 million in each fiscal year, is a portion of the orange bars. If the department's budget requests were fully funded for the biennium, the department's budget would still be less than the current year's appropriation. Next slide, please. Thank you. Although much less than the legislatively appropriated general funds, federal funds continue to play an important role providing supplemental support for our students. Congress only recently passed its omnibus budget bill for federal fiscal year 2022 to 23. We expect the funding to be fairly consistent with prior years, but we are awaiting notification about the amount that Hawaii will receive, and we'll share that information with you when it's available. ESSER and other coronavirus relief funds have been tremendously helpful by providing fiscal stability when state revenues faltered early in the pandemic. These funds also allow the department to respond to immediate pandemic impacts. For example, we fed children with our Grab and Go food program. We connected with our students via laptops to support distance learning. And we purchased sanitation supplies and equipment. The board and department also prioritize programs to support in-person learning, accelerate learning, support social-emotional well-being, and address health and safety needs. We continue to invest in free summer school for all public school students, out-of-school time such as A+, Hawaii Keiki Nursing Services, and providing $159 million in direct funding to the complex areas to support school needs specific to their communities. The department is transparent and accountable for the federal ESSER funds. We post monthly expenditure reports on our public website. Each monthly report covers over 2 years of allocations, expenditures, and encumbrances, broken down by activity. A new national report from Future Ed, a think tank at Georgetown University, showed that Hawaii ranks second amongst all states in spending its ESSER funds as of September 30th, 2022. Next slide, please. Thank you. As instructed, we have included these 3 links to the annually produced non-general fund reports. This slide details our general fund budget request for fiscal year 24. This table summarizes, by EDN, how our general fund budget proposal for fiscal year 24 moves from the current fiscal year, removes non-recurring funds in the next column, and adds collective bargaining costs. Then we show the department's board-approved request totals, followed by the proposed total general fund appropriation level. I would note that this slide represents the department's BOE approved request, which includes the $55.8 million in new requests that are part of the governor's budget. Of the BOE approved requests, 78% are in EDN 100, 150, and 400, which are resources directly to schools. The fiscal year 25 proposed budget is a little higher. It includes funding to continue some supports that will be ESSER funded through the end of the fiscal year, but are important supports to accelerate learning from pandemic impacts. There's often a question about whether schools are receiving an appropriate level of the budget. This graph shows that Hawaii's per pupil expenditures for instruction, in red, are higher than the national average. This reflects the commitment of the legislature to focus its investments in instruction at a rate that outpaces the national average. The graph also shows that our non-school administrative expenditures, in yellow, are lower than the national average. Our administrative expenditures have consistently been the lowest in the nation. As mentioned earlier, helping our students recover from pandemic impacts will extend beyond the biennium. And the future of our children and our state depends on improved outcomes from our public education system. This slide summarizes the department's requested budget by category. The high leverage initiatives, which we touched on earlier in the presentation, consist of strategic initiatives for school and system improvements. These initiatives aim to address long-standing challenges and needs of our students and communities. We are advocating for the governor to include these requests in his amended budget. The high leverage requests, as discussed earlier in the presentation, are for vulnerable populations, workforce readiness, secondary mathematics, leadership development, K-12 alignment, middle-level education, teacher recruitment, and other resources to support priority initiatives. Toward the bottom of the table, the budget requests are organized by the governor's budget priorities, including continuation of programs funded by specific appropriations, and health and safety, court order, or federal mandate requirements. As requested by the Finance Director's recent memorandum, yesterday we formally transmitted the department's request to the Department of Budget and Finance. The Finance Director's memorandum, 23-01, identified education as one of the governor's priorities. So we are optimistic that the Green administration will consider these requests for its financial plan. We humbly ask for the opportunity to work with the chairs and committees to consider the department's requests as well. The CIP requests represents the amount in the governor's budget for the department. The categories listed in the CIP budget request remains consistent with categories used over the last 2 years. The largest request in fiscal year 24 is the capacity category for new schools and to expand current schools, including more classrooms and land acquisition. Two other large categories are first, deferred maintenance, which includes building and site repair and maintenance, electrical and infrastructure improvements, and hazardous materials remediation. And second, federal grants, which provide matching funds to renovate military impacted schools. The other categories include support. This is for school improvements, including athletic facilities and electrical upgrades. Compliance. This includes compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and Title IX. health and safety. Instructional, which supports facilities for 21st century learning opportunities, such as career and technical education, and STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And the Office of Information Technology Services, which supports the department's technology infrastructure, including network equipment and bells and paging systems. Within these categories, projects will be selected from the prioritized lists provided to the Board of Education. The department is excited about the future of education and moving beyond the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. We are proud of the efforts of our teachers, administrators, and staff across our tri-level system who prevented our state from seeing some of the drastic drops in achievement that occurred across the nation. And we are looking to build on that foundation with our high-leverage initiatives to continue to propel our state forward. Thank you for this opportunity to share, and thank you for your continued support, which is so critical to the success of our public education system and our students, employees, and partners statewide. My team and I are standing by for any questions regarding our budget requests. Mahalo.
Thank you, Superintendent. Members, are there any questions?
I have questions, but they're not regarding the budget request.
Okay, go ahead. Vice Chair Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. These are not specific to the budget request, but I do have one that's budget related. In my district, there is a high school that has a lot of, Kalaheo High School, that has a high percentage of military dependent students. And I was shocked to find out how little money they get from the DoD. I had thought, or I had assumed, with no reason for thinking that the DoD would, or the federal government would compensate us, you know, for the fact that most of these people do not pay state income taxes, right? Most of them don't vote. They are, their residence is in another state. And so they are not paying in to our state income taxes that fund the education. And I thought that we were somehow being made whole for that. And I was quite surprised. And I just wanted to know how the DOE thinks about it, how the numbers fall from your perspective.
Thank you very much for the question, Vice Chair. Assistant Chief Financial Officer Hallett.
Representative, there's the Impact Aid program, which is a federal program. We have an annual survey that all schools or all parents are asked to complete once a year to identify which are federally dependent students. We do collect, depending on the concentration of federal students in a district, we get varying rates of compensation per student. But in total, we bring in about $45 million a year of Impact Aid dollars. Now, because we treat all students the same based on their needs, not because of their, just because you're a military student doesn't necessarily mean you have added expense. What we do with those dollars is we use them centrally to benefit all schools. And we do that by funding our substitute teacher budget with those Impact Aid dollars. So essentially those dollars go to benefit all students because then we don't have to use our general funds for that particular purpose. But we'd be happy to if you have any further questions about that, we can elaborate on that.
I guess what's not clear to me yet, is that 45 million, if you divide it by the number of students, is that as much as we would pay out of our state funds per student?
And CFO Hallett, if you can also articulate as to your efforts with regards to the parental surveys and efforts to increase participation so we can have more dollars come in per.
Oh yeah, for years there's been engagement through the JVF, Joint Ventures Education Forum, for example, and through the military community to get those in. But to your question, it's a fraction of the cost, and every year we share a report that indicates the fraction of that cost. I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but that's something I can follow up with you on.
Okay, I'm very interested. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I had one more question. Not necessarily for you. I wanted to know, thank you, Superintendent. I wanted to know, when we made the summer programs and the A+ programs free, did enrollment go up over the pre-pandemic period? I just wonder if there was an impact on in
In
families.
A+ and summer programs?
Yeah, did more people take advantage of that program, not because of pandemic impacts, but just because it was free to them?
Okay. Thank you for the question. Vice Chair, we will get that information and we'll get back to you on that if that's okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Members, any other questions? Okay.
Quick
Rep.
question
Purcell.
for CFO Hallett.
Okay.
Couple questions. Actually, just a couple requests that I had already shared, but I wanted to reiterate them. The first is slide 10. It basically provides a breakdown of spending, and I'm just going to ask, and it's a comparative analysis, and I'm just going to ask that that analysis be provided while adjusting for cost of living. So that's my first request, and I see Tammy, so I'm hopeful that you might already have that. And if not, then that can,
We can get that to you?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was that recent report, I think there was an article in the paper talking about Hawaii and our C grade. That report did do a cost adjustment for cost of living. And
Okay.
so we have that report.
Okay,
We'll
and if you
provide
could
to
share that with our office. And then the second is, if you could provide change over time analysis, and I'm looking for analysis from the last 2 decades, looking at public expenditure, public investment in public education, K-12, by the state, as a percentage of the state budget. So I want to see change over time, and I have an idea of the direction of change, but I'd like to see specific numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. We can get that to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rep. Prusso. And just for the edification of the other members also with regards to the actual per pupil expenditure based upon what we pay here in Hawaii, because if you run these numbers through like a comparable wage index. Sorry, I haven't eaten all day. I'm going to get there pretty soon. If you run that through like a CPI, it's going to show actually that what we're spending, although we appreciate it, it should actually be higher, because $13,500 is more in Oklahoma, as an example, than it is in the state of Hawaii. And so I think that's what Rep. Prusso is looking at. And it's important for us to have clear articulations as to what we are actually spending on our kids.
Thank you for the clarification.
Great to see you again.
Good to see
I
you
feel
too.
like it's just been a couple of days. It's not a question, but more a request as well. I have asked for the DOE's list of external contracts, I think 3 times now in a public hearing. I'm going to ask one more time if you can please get that list of external contracts to me. Thank you.
Me too.
Rep. Peruso as well.
The contracts were something that were requested from the Finance and the Ways and Means Committee. It's included as attachments in testimony we submitted to those committees. I'm not sure if we submitted the same attachments to today's testimony. I'm looking around for help, but okay, we did to this committee, so it's table 14. It is a list of all those contracts.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Members, any other questions? Okay, I also want to acknowledge Board Member Arakaki, who's also here. I don't want to leave him out as well. We'll just keep it very high level because the hour is late, and I think you folks have been here all day. Just going back to some of your initial slides, Superintendent, thank you again for being here. You indicated that the student population right now within the state of Hawaii for our public schools is around 156,000 students. In recent history, that number was actually up north of 180,000. I'm wondering if you have any indication as to why there's been such a precipitous drop.
Thank you for the question. Deputy.
It's Tammy Chun coming up. Thank you.
Tammy Chun, Deputy Superintendent. So we have seen our public DOE school enrollment numbers decline, there's a couple of factors going on. There's some number of students who are, the charter school enrollment has increased a little, so some students are going there. In addition, we saw during pandemic that we had an increase in the number of students who decided to homeschool. So that does represent part of that, but the larger issue, really the driver of the decline, is demographics. So when we look over time, these are the birth rates for the students who are in school right now were lower than they were, say, 10 years ago. So if you'd like to, we can have further conversations or show some enrollment trends over time, but again, the main driver is demographics, it's birth rates with regard to students who are school age now, and then again, smaller numbers, but some around charter school enrollment increasing and homeschool increasing.
Thank you so much for that explanation. Members, any other questions? Okay. Vice Chair Martin, it's okay, ask questions.
So about the demographic change, that's something that I've seen in my district. And I wonder to what extent the DOE is responding to that, thinking about the need for schools and allocation of schools in different geographic areas. So for example, here at the state legislature, we got rid of seats in some places, added seats in other places. And in my community, we have neighborhoods with multiple schools competing for students and losing enrollment and losing ability to provide PE teachers, music teachers, art teachers because of small budgets. So I wonder to what extent the DOE is open to assessing the need to perhaps not just open schools, but consolidate schools in areas, not in rural areas with no other schools, but in areas that have multiple schools with declining enrollment. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Vice Chair, we will definitely take a look at the data, continue to take a look at the data that you shared. Should we need to initiate evaluation of that data and work closely with the Board of Education. The Board of Education has the authority to address some of the issues that you've shared, but we definitely will work together with them and provide whatever information that we need. But we'll connect up with you to better understand the concerns that you're raising. Thank you.
Okay. Rep. Pruso.
This is a quick follow-up on the question about external contracts, and Rep. Capella and I have been asking about this for years because not just the kind of situation that arose with SLS, but also when we think about writing our standards. So recently you folks have been involved in rewriting the CTE standards, and it's my understanding that you brought in someone from the continent to oversee that, and that there was pretty significant pushback with the outcomes around the ag pathways, natural resources pathways, because they were so devoid of a place-based kind of approach. So I guess from my question for you is that how did it come about that we reached out to the continent to have someone oversee the CTE standards writing process?
Thank you very much for that question. I know we did. Let's see. We did a contract with an individual that I believe had experiences in CTE, broad experiences at the state level, and we are specific to your question related to the natural resources standards. I believe the Office of Curriculum Instruction and Design did engage with our local partners to ensure that now, I believe we're transitioning so that the standards reflect our local culture and our local values related to natural resources. So we are moving in that direction related to the question about specifically the natural resources standards. Related to the question of the contracting of services, I believe that the individual was contracted to help support our CTE office, Career and Technical Education office, in assessing and reevaluating those standards amongst all of our CTE pathways.
So I guess I'm asking you if it's your understanding that we lack that expertise or knowledge base here.
I think definitely we have expertise and knowledge base in Hawaii. I think also it's important sometimes to bring our folks together in Hawaii to take a look at what we're doing, but also to bring a perspective from what the rest of the country is doing to ensure that we're aligning to those same standards.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you.
Thank you, Representative. Particularly, just to piggyback off that, there's a tremendous amount of synergy from the school level, from the complex area level, variety of different levels to better build out those CTE pathways. It is confusing as to why we would seek outside of the state to facilitate those types of discussions.
We continue to evaluate within the Office of Curriculum Instruction Design and our CTE office how we're progressing in working with our consultants that we work with. And I know that we'll continue to do that. We definitely want to get to a point, and I believe we are, where we're able to assess what our contractor partners can support us with as we continue to build capacity within Hawaii. So you're right, Chair. It is definitely an exciting time. We do hear the concerns that have been shared from the schools as we work together to improve the efforts in CTE.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Other questions, keeping it very high level and almost in conclusion. And so you mentioned in your presentation the governor's request of $55 million in addition to your current request, which is actually less than this current year's appropriation. I'm wondering if it's less than this year's appropriation if we run into any maintenance of efforts challenges, which we're currently dealing with. Maybe a CFO Hallett can answer that question. Or someone else.
Deputy Otoguro.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair. Kurt Otoguro, Deputy of Operations, Deputy Superintendent of Operations. So you're talking specific about the MOE funding,
Yes.
the $256 million. So yes, so we have it's cash, and it's in two buckets. And so one is called lump sum. It's one big pot, $125 million, that is come together, and we have discretion to apply where we want to use that. The second pot of money is approximately $130 million, and that's specific for 70 projects. We call it line items, by school, by purpose, playground equipment, studies, what have you. So they're very prescriptive and directive. And so to date, of the $125 million, we applied a new program under the deal we called our job order contracting. And so we were able to apply that and get about $78 million already committed and out the door. So we have approximately 30 some odd million to go. So we feel very confident that by the end of the lapse date, that we will be able to expend all of that. So the lump sum, we believe, is not a problem. The line item is something that we're taking a hard look at. And as Tanaka has told me, there are different ways that we can do that through consultants. We can also do planning and design. We're looking at paying for supplies, or even contracting with a PO and paying up front. So different aggressive ways that we can apply that. But we're not saying that we're going to spend all $130 million. We're going to do our best to do that. We'll give the committee a report, as well as BNF has asked for that as well.
And is that the aggregate amount of ESSER and other federal COVID-related funds that is left, the $30 million? Or is that specific to capital improvement projects?
Yeah, so the budget, and Brian can talk, the CFO can talk to that, but there were ESSER funds previously that are in play for the coming year, which is why the ask is a little bit less. We still have the benefit of federal funding, but that will disappear over time.
Okay. Just to oversimplify then, so what is the percentage of unallocated federal funds specific to COVID that are left, defined as it's not that money is not slotted for a particular project
Federal
or
funds.
operational costs.
Federal funds.
Correct.
Yeah.
ESSER funds, etc.
That should be on slide 15. That's a summary there of the $689 million. We've got $276 million left. And I believe as noted, we're second fastest in the nation in terms of our rate of spending of these funds. We do seem to be spending at a clip that we will, by September 2024, when these funds performance period ends, we should be fully expended.
Okay.
We've been timing it and very concerned about the potential cliff effect that would follow that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay.
If I could, though, real briefly, on the MOE question, no, we shouldn't have MOE problems. We're talking about the biennium for next 2 years. There is no maintenance of effort in relation to ESSER. There are Elementary and Secondary Education Act maintenance of efforts concerns, one of which says we must spend at least 90% in 1 year compared to the prior year. We should be okay with this request. SPED specifically, you're supposed to spend at least what you spent the prior year. I think we'll be okay there as well. So, sorry, that was a long answer, but short answer is no.
No. Thank you for that clarification. Members, any other questions? Okay. If there are none, thank you again for the Department of Education to being here. We're going to finish up this conversation because it's been a long day. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.